If you were to stop a random person on the street and ask them to name 3 Batman villains, I think that most people would probably mention the Riddler. He's easily one of the most recognisable rogues, be that Jim Carrey's cackling over-the-top supervillain in a green leotard, or the more suave version seen in Batman the Animated Series. And there's a very good reason for this. Whenever there's a Batman show or film, he usually turns up sooner or later, and generally speaking, no matter how much his visual design changes, his core gimmick almost always stays the same. He focuses on brain teasers and conundrums. But the problem is, in order to convincingly write him, the writers need to have a head for puzzles, and this is something that every Batman writer has struggled with. When a character's entire gimmick relies on outsmarting the world's greatest detective with complex mind games, writers constantly risk making those puzzles feel either absurdly convoluted or underwhelmingly simple, and that's always something that has held the Riddler back. Ever since his debut in 1948's Detective Comics number 140, Edward Nygma's defining trait has been his pathological need to prove that he's the smartest person in the room, because that makes him feel like he has power over others. He knows something they don't know, and that's really the best way to sum the Riddler up. Frank Gorshin's giggling 1960s performance turned him into a pop culture icon, although he mostly vanished from the comics in the 1970s because of his close association with that show. 1992's Batman the Animated Series elevated him into a sleek corporate video game designer seeking intellectual revenge after he was denied royalties for his hit game. And 2004's The Batman reimagined him as a gothic cyber hacker. And I suppose that makes what Batman Caped Crusader does in Season 2 one of the most radical shifts for an established character in recent memory, even more so than Paul Dano's Zodiac Killer-like version from The Batman. Now, anyone that has watched my other Caped Crusader videos and has engaged in the discussion will know that people often debate surface-level changes to comic book icons, things like altering a character's race or gender. But I always argue that, at the end of the day, a visual update doesn't change the fundamental soul of who the character is. And what the Caped Crusader team did goes far deeper with the Riddler. They stripped away the puzzle gimmick, for the most part, and instead focused on what drives him, and that is insecurity. This is a show whose universe is populated by 1940s mob bosses, mad scientists, and monsters. A cackling weirdo in a green question mark leotard leaving brain teasers at crime scenes simply wouldn't fit. He would become a joke, a bit like King Tut in the first season. By removing the riddle gimmick and instead giving him that nickname because he riddles people with bullets, the Caped Crusader team eliminated a massive creative bottleneck. This allows them to focus on building an unpredictable, dangerous character who moves the story forward through his impulsive, violent acts. Eddie Nygma is the right hand of mobster Rupert Thorne, and he's very much in the mould of the classic 1930s film noir gangster, like some of the characters Jimmy Cagney played. He has risen high in the ranks of the crime family because of how ruthless he is. He's more of a shoot first and don't bother asking any questions at all kind of guy. And it doesn't take a psychology degree to see that he suffers from feelings of inadequacy, which explains why he's so quick to fly off the handle at the most mild of inconveniences. He still has the same manic energy as the earlier versions of the character, it's just channeled into being a volatile gangster. In the lead up to the show's release, I read as many reviews as I could find, and some of those early reviews cited this change as one that was hard to stomach. One review I read even went as far as to claim that people like Bruce Timm and James Tucker don't understand the characters, and that is such a mind-bogglingly ignorant take that I genuinely thought I'd had a stroke and imagined the whole thing, but no, someone genuinely thought that was a good idea to publish and put their name to it. Some might argue that taking away his gimmick makes this version feel limited, but being chained to a setup where every scheme requires a high IQ puzzle is what boxed the character in the first place. And maybe some of you watching this feel that same way, but I'd suggest that you ask yourself the following question. What actually makes Edward Nygma who he is? Is it a green suit with question marks on it, or is it his fragile, insatiable ego? The Caped Crusader team must have realised that the riddles were just one specific outlet for his true driving force, a desperate, toxic need to feel superior and have control. I argue that by expunging the Silver Age gimmicks to fit a more pulpy 1940s noir world, Caped Crusader shows the Riddler's core psychology is strong enough to survive without the theatrical crutches. Great adaptations don't just copy and paste what came before, they test whether a character's spirit can thrive when pushed into totally uncharted territory. And the key thing to remember is that this version does not somehow invalidate everything that came before. Nobody's going to come around your house and burn all your DVDs, Blu-rays and comics. It's just a different avenue for the character that's worth exploring, even if you don't like it very much. Personal taste is what it is. Now, is this my favourite version of the Riddler? No, not at all. Nothing tops Paul Dini's private detective Riddler who decided to solve crimes to prove he's better than Batman, if you ask me. But I appreciate what they were going for. Edward Nygma is such a vile snake of a man. The only person he respects is Rupert Thorne, but it's clear that he has ambitions to replace him. And when Thorne goes missing, as in gets murdered by the Joker and no one knows where he is, Nygma says that Thorne left him in charge and nobody questions it. While he has men who follow him, his schemes do make them a lot of money. They do not respect him, and that's because he doesn't respect his men either. When Batman interrupts their attempt at murdering the key witness against Thorne, an accountant with an impeccable memory for dates who they call Calendar Man, he'd rather gun down his own men than run the risk of having them give away any information. And his men notice this. When one man questions whether it's worth taking the risks, given how many of their friends have died, Nygma asks him a riddle. How do you fix a leaky boat? The answer is, you plug it. And there's a pun, because plugging is also slang for shooting someone. Granted, not exactly the biggest brain teaser, but it's perfectly fitting for this Riddler. After that public display of authority, no one challenges him again. Aside from his erratic violence, I think Nygma's most defined trait is how treacherous he is. First of all, he lies when he says that Rupert Thorne left him in charge. Based on their conversations while visiting Thorne in prison, Thorne clearly felt that Nygma was mismanaging the business, and he's lucky he didn't get plugged himself. Secondly, he defiles his closest friend, Mark Desmond, by injecting him with Hugo Strange's blockbuster serum without his consent. This temporarily turns Des into a hulking beast who tries to finish off Calendar Man. When Batman successfully defeats Blockbuster in an excruciating scene where he repeatedly rams into him with the Batmobile, Nygma leaves Des to the cops. Despite knowing him since childhood and how much he hates squealers, Nygma is convinced that Des will betray him, likely because it's what he would do if he was in the same situation, and he orders a hit on him. In one of the best episodes of the season, Batman infiltrates Blackgate Prison as Matches Malone, befriends Des and helps him to escape. He wants to know who this mysterious gun-toting boss is, and when he's introduced, Riddler shoots him. Again, it's an emotional reaction. In his eyes, Malone is the reason why his attempts to murder Des failed, but I also think there's a tinge of jealousy too. Des is his friend, no one else's. While Des hadn't knowingly betrayed Riddler, he did let Batman in on their secrets, and as such, Riddler gunned him down. The other figure that he betrays is his long-suffering girlfriend Lilly Gardner. Not that you'd know that was her name unless you read the credits, because Nygma only calls her Baby. In fact, he never bothers to learn any women's names. The only time he pays them any attention is if he's sexually attracted to them, and then they are just Baby to him. And Lilly isn't blind to this. She knows full well what a philanderer he is, but she notes that eventually he loses interest in his shiny new toys and always comes back to her. That, she says, is proof of his love for her. But she's fooling herself. Nygma doesn't love anyone. I'm not really certain if he likes himself all that much. He's desperate to feel like a big shot, which is why he goes on the attack anytime he feels inadequate and collects women like trading cards. However, insecurity is what leads to his downfall. While collecting protection money at a flower shop, the owner, a former GCPD officer, stands up to his aggression and makes him back down. Rather than accepting the humiliation, he returns moments later and guns the man down in front of his daughter, and she is the one who ultimately takes him down. I'll get into this more in a future video, but the daughter, Rose Forrest, suffers a psychological break, one that nicely mirrors Batman's, I might add, and she adopts the identity of Thorne. In true femme fatale style, she heads to Nygma's club, Stumpers, as in something that stumps you, it's hard to solve, get it? And seduces him. Nygma doesn't suspect a thing because Thorne is wearing a red wig and a glamorous, alluring green dress. If he paid close enough attention to her face, then he might have recognized the florist's daughter. But he takes the bait. Of course a woman who looks like that is interested in him. Why wouldn't she be? He's a big shot. But in reality, she was setting a trap for him. When Batman storms the club, she offers to take Nygma to a secluded romantic hideaway where no one would ever think to look for him and they can finally consummate their love. But by the time he realizes what's happening, it's too late. She has taken him back to the flower shop where he murdered her father, and she has prepared a wreath for him. Thorn guns him down without mercy and leaves his corpse there to rot. And in the end, that is the ultimate poetic justice for this version of Edward Nygma. He has clearly spent his entire life terrified of feeling small and of being humiliated. His entire crime spree was him desperately chasing the high of being a big shot mob boss. But in the end he gets taken out not by Batman, a rival mobster, or as part of some grand criminal mastermind showdown, but by a grieving daughter using his own inflated ego against him, and he dies brutally without an audience. By taking away the theatrical puzzle boxes, Batman Caped Crusader stripped the Riddler down to his bare, ugly wires. A pathetic, deeply insecure narcissist whose endless need to prove himself ultimately sealed his own fate. It's a bold reinterpretation that proves a villain's identity isn't tied to their clothes, it's tied to the tragic human flaws underneath the mask. And now comes the part where I ask what you thought. Did this brutal gangster take on the Riddler work for you, or do you prefer Edward Nygma as a cackling mastermind leaving clues at the crime scene? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I will be reading them all. As always, special thanks to my channel members who help to make these videos possible, and if you want to see your name on screen and get early access to all of my upcoming video essays, then join the channel now. Thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.